be aware. So again, this will be shared with the community, specifically for the reasons that for those community members or families that were not able to attend, we want to be able to make this a resource for them as well. Cool, let's start off. If we could just pin the staff real quick, we'll start off with introductions and then we'll go down the line. And again, continue to introduce yourselves. Feel free to introduce yourselves as you feel comfortable. I also want to say that throughout the entirety of this event, feel free to drop any questions, comments, or concerns in the chat. It will be monitored by my staff, and we will bring up the questions or comments. We'll bring them up at the appropriate time and space. Thank you to everybody that's still coming in. I know there's people still coming in. Just a quick reminder, we are recording this to share with the community. Please rename yourself, rename it with your first and last name, include your pronouns so that we can be respectful when speaking with each other. Make sure you're muted so we can respect the speakers. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, your name, what organization you're coming from, and why is this important to you? Why is mental health important to you? And one last friendly reminder that this event is being recorded and shared with the community at large. We want to make this a resource for everyone who wasn't able to attend today. Cool. If we could stop screen sharing just for 1 second, Nali, and then we'll jump into if we could pin the 4 staff members. And then we'll start with introductions and we'll go there. And everybody else, we encourage you to keep your camera on, but feel free to turn it off if you have to, as long as you're still participating. This is a very important. Cool. All right, so I'm going to start off now. I really do appreciate everybody for coming today. My name is Pedro Cruz. I'm the director of the Youth Development Program here at IBA, Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción, which means Puerto Rican Tenants in Action. We're super excited to hold this space today and create the safe space for all of us to be able to talk about this important issue that impacts all of us or someone we love. So again, my name is Pedro Cruz, and I'll be for the most part doing the introductions and the outros, but I want to just remind that this is a youth-led event. We really want to give the youth the opportunity to lead this conversation and to lead this panel. They chose it, and we'll talk about that more too. This is this was a topic dear to all of the youth in our program's hearts. So again, I want to lift them up. They are the leaders today. My staff is just support. We're here to support these amazing leaders that we have with us. So real quick, I already introduced myself. I'll open the floor up for my staff to do quick introductions of themselves. They want to just share their names, their titles, and anything else they want to include.
Hi, I'm Sandra. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the academic support coordinator.
Hi, I'm Adele. I use he, him series pronouns, and I am one of the youth programs coordinators.
Hi, I'm Nalitza. I use she, her, and I am also one of the youth program coordinators.
And before we get started, again, thank you to my staff really for all the support and all the hard work that we've done to get here again. But again, all the applause and all the credit goes to these young people that you're going to see today and the words that you're going to hear. Before we get to that, I just want to really emphasize the why we're doing this. We took time during the cycle to ask our youth what was important to them and what change did we want to make, or what impact did we want to have on the city. And mental health was the leading topic that came up. And surprisingly, this was about, before this new year, and now mental health is everywhere and it's the leading conversation. So I'm super proud that they jumped on it and they just really followed their hearts with it and all the hard work they put to it. So we wanted to create, again, a community conversation, which we feel is very much needed around this topic, specifically around school, mental health in relation to school. And we're going to end with a resource kit that we've created in collaboration with Tufts and Harvard students. So please stay till the end. We're going to share a resource kit that's going to be super valuable, not just for you, the people you serve, but also your friends and families. So again, I encourage everybody's attendance to the end. It's going to be a lot of great stuff. So again, thank you for coming. So we're doing some poetry claps there for everybody. And with that, we'll start off, and I'm going to we got an amazing video by our mayor, Michelle Wu. She gave us a video in support of this initiative. So we'll start off with that. And then you'll see our students who are gonna be hosting, they'll jump on screen and they'll take it from there. Again, just quick house rules reminders. If you haven't renamed yourself, please rename yourself, include your pronouns so we can respect that. Keep yourself muted. And if you have any questions, my staff all have a star next to their name. So Nalitza, Adele, Sandra, and myself, we all have a star next to our names. If you have any questions or any concerns, any technical issues, feel free to hit us up in the chat. So with that, I'll pass it over so we could get the video from our mayor, and then we'll start with the panel. Again, thank you for your presence and thank you for your energy.
Do you see the video? Okay.
Hi, everyone. It's Mayor Michelle Wu. Thank you to EBA Boston for inviting me to open this panel's discussion. The COVID-19 pandemic deepened an existing mental health crisis in our city and across our country. It has especially impacted our students who were already in need of support before the pandemic. So I'm especially grateful that you're taking the time to host this urgent conversation around mental health and education. One of the hurdles that people face when seeking mental health support is stigma, something that we must work together to overcome. To help ensure that our students are connected to mental health resources, we've placed a social worker in every Boston Public School. And the Boston Public Health Commission and other partners are also providing mental health services directly to our young people, helping develop healthy strategies to manage anxiety. I'm glad that we're all working towards the goal of ensuring our young people are safe and healthy. Together, we can provide effective mental health resources to all of our residents. I hope you have a rewarding discussion. Hola a todos, les saluda la alcaldesa Michelle Wu. Gracias a Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción por invitarme a abrir este evento. La pandemia intensificó la crisis de salud mental en nuestra ciudad y nuestro país. Ha tenido un impacto especialmente profundo en nuestros estudiantes, que ya necesitaban apoyo antes de la pandemia. Estoy muy agradecida de que estén tomando el tiempo para tener esta conversación urgente acerca de la salud mental y la educación. Uno de los obstáculos que enfrenta la gente cuando buscan apoyo de salud mental es el estigma, algo que todos debemos de trabajar juntos para resolver. Hemos puesto un trabajador social en cada escuela pública de Boston para asegurar que nuestros estudiantes estén conectados con recursos de salud mental. También la Comisión de Salud Pública de Boston y otras organizaciones están prestando servicios de salud mental directamente a los jóvenes, ayudándoles a desarrollar estrategias para controlar la ansiedad. Me alegro de que todos trabajemos con el objetivo de garantizar la seguridad de nuestros jóvenes. Juntos podemos proporcionar recursos eficaces de salud mental a todos nuestros residentes. Espero que tengan una buena conversación.
So again, thank you very much to our mayor for that message. One last reminder, please feel free to drop any questions, comments, or reactions in the chat. It's being monitored by my staff and we'll bring up the questions and comments at the appropriate time. But again, thank you, and I'll pass it over now to the host for tonight, the real leaders.
Hi, my name is Adelina Rodriguez. My pronouns are she, her. I'm in the 9th grade at Josiah Quincy Upper School, and I've been with YDP for 2 cycles.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adriana Arias-Guzman. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a freshman in college at Bunker Hill, and I've been in YDP for over 5 cycles. Now we're going to go over the agenda for today. So first, we're going to have performances by Adriana and Juan. After that, the panel will begin. After, we'll have more performances by Raymond and Inalif. Then the panel will continue. And then to top it off, we'll have the audience Q&A.
Now we're going to get started with 2 youth performances. Adriana Arias-Guzman is a 12th grader at Boston Day and Evening Academy. She will begin by sharing her creative writing piece about a girl who feels overwhelmed with schoolwork because unknowingly to her school, she has to work long hours to help her family out. As soon as she finishes her performance, Juan Rojas is a 10th grader at Charlestown High School. Will share his poem about how society holds you to expectations that can be problematic, true to yourself.
As the audience, please react or hit the chat and say great job. Maybe tell them about something you liked about their piece, or you can type I understand to stand in solidarity.
Hello, my name is Adriana, and this is my piece, Distraction, Distress, Disorder. A soft melody played throughout the room. The girl, with her head snuggled into her pillow, let out a sigh. She let the music slowly lull her. Her body melted into the bed below her, sleep ready to take over. The stress from having to pick up other people's shifts at work, to help pay bills, and the anxiety toll from grades coming out, flowing off her body with each breath. Suddenly, there was a knock at her door. Confused, she let her head turn to it. Should she open it? She had locked it for a reason, that after a long, stressful week of work and school, she just needed at least an hour to herself. She decided she didn't want to be bothered, grabbing the remote to her speaker and hiring the volume 2 notches. She tried to get back into the music, but her thoughts didn't give her any chance to. Who was at the door? What do they want? What if it's really important? No, she thought. I just want to relax. They can wait. Then loud bangs sounded throughout the room. She sat up quickly. She could hear her heart pumping against her chest. Her head started to spin. The noises all together mixing into what can only be called chaos. Tears sprinkled her eyes. I just want to be alone. Her lips started to quiver. I'm tired. She slowly got up. Putting one foot after the other, she dragged her feet across the floor. She didn't understand what was going on and why the person wasn't just leaving her alone. When she opened the door, she was faced with an outstretched hand holding a paper and her mother's angry expression. She looked down at the paper, a report card with all Fs. She finally let the tears fall. Honestly, this all could have been avoided though, if the school system realized that students have a life outside of just tests and homework. If the school system saw that she had more on her plate and paid attention to how she always slept in class because she just had a 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift hours before.
Here's my unspoken words, the words you've never heard from me, because the real me is who you don't see. The me you see got used to the danger. I keep in all of my anger. The only thing more stranger are strangers. People think I'm dangerous. Truth is, you don't know what danger is. They say I should keep my true self hidden, but if I open up, my heart ends up bitten, because I love to say the words that are forbidden, because I just love spitting. Blood dripping to the floor, skin ripping, asking for more. It's what we sipping because we try not to endure. My life slowly slipping as my body gets more sore. But still, they call me hysterical just because I decide I want to get lyrical. They'll ask a question and say it's rhetorical. Oh my God, it's a fucking miracle. But I can't say that no, because it's all sunshines and rainbows, as if somehow you do know. You do know. So you tell me to let it go. You tell me to let go of the ones that are close because you're not the one I chose. But you know how this goes. So I'm just going to make these flows. But here's my problem. See, now society is no more my priority rather than my anxiety, because I don't have the authority, but I still need integrity because you don't have the dignity to attain the ability to have sympathy. And that's just fucked up, ain't it? But if the hat fits, wear it. Fuck it. I'm just going to quit because you're thinking, oh, this is lit while I'm spitting the real shit. So as death is blowing me a kiss, my mind continues to twist as I get spat on by black mist. I remember the ones I truly missed, because few have seen the real me, the me that wants to put a bullet to his head, shoot him dead, paint the walls with thread, but I'm still the one that bled. You don't see that I'm shy, that I would just want to be held tight. You don't see that all I want to do is cry. Fun fact, I do that every night.
I'm sorry, there was a bit of a difficulty, so I'm gonna say the rest of my poem, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Adriana, for the flexibility.
Honestly, this all could have been avoided though. If the school system realized that students have a life outside of just tests and homework. If the school system saw that she had more on her plate and paid attention to how she always slept in class because she just had a 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift hours before. If the school system paid attention to their students' emotional needs as much as the work they didn't do, they would have seen all the time she put her head down, close to a mental breakdown. Schools need to learn how to take better care of their students, whether that's checking in on them or giving them that space to reach out for help. So let them know that they're not alone and that it's okay to make mistakes. Schools need to learn how to understand their student situations and take some of the load off. Give them things to look forward to, whether that's more interactive activities instead of writing pages on pages. Let your students know that they're people too and that they matter.
Thank you for those lovely performances. Now we're going to get started with our panel discussion. We're joined today by Ila Encarnacion, Cole Moran, and Joline Brito, taking the time to participate in this conversation.
One second while we share screen. Thank you for everybody's patience.
Ila Encarnacion is a licensed independent clinical social worker who received her master's from Simmons College. She has been working with families since 2009, doing home-based work, mentoring, family, and individual therapy. Most recently, she has been working as an adjustment school counselor at a charter school in Somerville, Mass. She grew up in Boston and is of Dominican descent.
Cole Moran teaches grade 10 English at Charlestown High School. The first in his family to graduate from college, Cole is passionate about elevating student voice and choice to rethink higher schooling. He is a graduate of Yale University and the Boston Teachers Residency, and is currently a Bread Loaf Teacher Network Fellow. His follow-on Democratic Schooling has been featured in the Boston Globe, and he is currently a co-authoring a chapter with his students on their effort to reimagine Charlestown High School. He has been working with Boston students, families, and educators for the past 5 years. Joline Brito is a 9th grader at Fenway High School. She's passionate about poetry, social justice, and nature. Joline hopes that society becomes a safer space for all of us and uses her poetry and social media to spread awareness about the injustices that women, people of color, and young people are facing today. She has been part of the youth development program for a year and has shared her poetry in spaces like the MLK Memorial Breakfast.
Welcome, panelists. Thank you for being here with us today. Could each of you begin by sharing why mental health is important to you? And why are you an advocate for mental health?
And you can go in any order. I know we didn't pick any order, so whoever feels comfortable to start may unmute themselves and start. Thank you.
Hi, I can start. My name is Ellie. As was discussed, I am currently a school adjustment social worker. Basically, mental health is important to me because it is really at the core of learning. We always think about school as a place where you think about academics, right? You go to learn math, science, English. But the reality is that if your social and emotional well-being isn't being taken under consideration, you are not going to be able to learn. There's no way you're going to be thinking about what 2 + 2 is if you're hungry, if you don't have shelter, if you're anxious, if you're scared, if you're depressed. And so I think that's why it's really important for schools to consider these things, because they really do affect the way that a student is able to learn. I think that schools need to focus more on safety. They need to focus more on being a community and really thinking about what is going on outside of school and how it is affecting students. You know, I'm a strong advocate because I grew up in Boston, so I know what it was like to be a BPS student. I am a parent, so I think about it from that perspective, but also just the idea of, you know, children spend a lot of time in school. It is a very important place, and it should be a place where they feel safe and where they are getting the things that they need. And sometimes these things they can't get at home, so they go searching for it in school. I also think that we really need to consider where behaviors come from, right? Like very typically, I think there's this idea that students behave a certain way because they are trying to be annoying or because they are bad. And there's always a reason behind that behavior, and we always have to consider those things. And I think schools should be one of those places.
Thank you very much.
Cole, would you like to speak, or Joline, to add on to what she said?
I can go next. Ellie, Joline, nice to be on the panel with you. And I just want to also shout out Adriana and Joe. That was amazing. I wish we were in person with you to kind of like be able to show you the love, but I hope you felt it through the chat. You can definitely tell on a Zoom when people are freaking out. That was super cool. So thank you guys for grounding us in that. Cole Moran, I teach 10th grade English at Charlestown. Honored to be on this panel. Joe's one of my students, an amazing student, amazing writer, and an amazing poet. And so thank you for inviting me. I really care about mental health because I think it would echo everything Ellie you just said. And I'd also like to add that it is, I believe, fundamentally, we can't talk about mental health without also talking about structural oppression and racism that exist in Boston, the Boston public schools, and broader society, obviously. But I think it's very important to think about that in a concrete way. It is great to have a social worker in every school, but on the ground, if that means you're a student and you have a 4-month wait time to see a social worker, what is that being able to do? We have some awesome social workers in our system, but if we don't think more broadly about what access you have depending on the school you go to in Boston, how different schools have different resources, how some high schools have private funds that they can raise to provide more funding depending on which school you go to. I think these are all essential questions that we have to think about when providing mental health supports and equitable access to mental health supports across our city. And so I think this is really essential if kind of to start in this conversation. So thank you all for having me.
Hi. Am I being too loud? No? Okay. So it is very nice to meet Cole and Ellie. The way I would answer this question is that as a woman of color, I have been really attacked by the mental health system, especially in the education system. Throughout my life, I've been going to like psychologists and therapists, and it does not work for me. On the contrary, I feel attacked. My middle school really added a lot of stress and made me really overwhelmed. My freedom of speech was violated a lot of times in my middle school, which is the reason why I am such an advocate for mental health. I think it is a very unspoken subject. And it's really important. So because I am one of the people that are very affected by it, and I see so many people around me that are affected by it, I have a bunch of senior friends that are so overwhelmed by the societal pressure of having their lives figured out by the time they're 18. And I'm like, we need to change this. The social workers that I've worked with do not help me at all. On the contrary, one of the social workers was the one who violated my freedom of speech. So there is a lot to change in this education and mental health system. And I am very glad to be part of it because I am representing not only women, but also women of color and my whole entire community. And I want a change.
Okay, thank you panelists for sharing your stories. We will now welcome our next performers, Raymond and Inalise.
Raymond Matos is a ninth grader at Edward M. Kennedy Academy for Health Careers. His piece is about the pressure he feels to do well in school and how his school addresses mental health for their students. Inalise Valles will perform her piece next.
Inalise is a 10th grader at Cathedral High School, and her piece is a candid account of difficulties that mental health possesses, even when wanting to do your best. She talks about the influences that school has on young people's mental health and ends her piece on a positive note, letting everyone know how much influence they have on others' well-being. Please welcome Raymond and Inalise. We'd love for you to continue to use the reactions and or chat to say great job and show support.
Hello, the title of my piece is School Pressure. When I do when I feel anxious, stressed, or overwhelmed during the school day would be listening to music. School will sometimes be nerve-wracking for me. It has put a lot of stress on me, especially in math class. I would sometimes feel like I'm drowning in anxiety due to the quantity of work I receive. The amount of work that school gives me makes me feel uneasy. School nowadays are trying to help out with mental health, but they haven't quite focused on a topic. They treat it like something unnatural. They also have offered different things like after-school support or therapy during school hours, but never tried to reduce the cost of stress, aka too much coursework. The amount of work that the amount of classwork they give is like a limited paper overload of work. During school, I would feel a sense of pressure when I get a glimpse of my grades, knowing that colleges are looking at them too. What I do to make myself feel better will be watching YouTube videos because it's a distraction from the real world. Something else I'll do would be going out with my friends during the weekends because hanging out with my friends is quite stress relief because I'm able to communicate my problems with them. I'll also try to talk to my older sister about how I feel. When I have nothing to do during the week, I'll go to the beach and let all my worries drop like apples falling from a tree. The wind would make me feel like SpongeBob in that one episode in which the air flows through his body. That type of feeling would always bring me joy. Mental health is addressed at my school as a problem, but they don't make it seem as a big deal. My school does provide help by offering one-on-ones with teachers to make sure we as students are doing better. What I think my school can do better would be announcing every month the resources that they offered around mental wellness and getting someone that is more prepared and knowledgeable than the teachers themselves. Call the Boston Health Service hotline to speak with a BPS psychologist and or social worker at 617-635-9676.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you to all of our youth performers today. We really appreciate your willingness to share your experiences with us. Now we're going to hear more.
No, we actually,
about-
Isaiah, sorry to interrupt you, my brother. We actually have space for Inalise, who's going to share her piece.
Oh, I apologize.
No, you're good. There's teamwork. It's a community effort, my brother. You're good. Inalise, if you're comfortable sharing, you can go now, actually.
Okay, thank you. So hello, everybody. So I'm going to say my piece. The influence of school on young people's mental health. Something I do when I feel overwhelmed, stressed, or anxious, especially with school, is I like to write down everything I have to do. For example, if I have a lot of assignments to do, I'll write them all down on a little notepad in order of their due dates. I found that this helps me with visualizing and dividing the things I have to do. Something I have been doing when I feel depressed or just have not had the best day is I try to look at the positives of my day, even if it is just the slightest thing, such as someone making me laugh or a good meal I ate. I find this really helps because when a person is sad, they usually become blinded with negativity, but I believe people should try and look at positives as well. However, there are some times when I feel so overwhelmed with the things I have to do that these strategies just don't work out. Sometimes I just feel so overwhelmed that I just lose all motivation to do anything at all. During these times, I just put my AirPods on, blast my music, and put my head down. Maybe trying to escape the world for just a brief moment. Maybe expecting things to miraculously disappear. But in reality, time just passes by, leaving me and my assignments behind. Now, I feel even more overwhelmed and stressed than before from all the time I had wasted. Oh, I wish things could have just miraculously disappeared. I go to get some snacks to maybe motivate me a little. Then I open TikTok. Time passes and it goes from 9 p.m. to almost 11. Why did I have to procrastinate? Why can't I just get it done and over with? This is a constant cycle for me that doesn't seem to end. I just keep falling into the same actions and restarting the same cycle. I don't know why I lose motivation so often or why I overthink so much, but I'm a teenage high school student. This is the reality for many others my age and adults as well. Yeah, healthy coping mechanisms are nice, of course. They can be hard to allow motivation or the desire to get things done. Sometimes, without explanation, us teenagers just lose motivation and our ways of coping often just make things worse. Anxiety, stress, and depression are all mental disorders that teenagers deal with every single day. Every single one is valid and should not be overlooked. The statistics of a student having any kind of depression is approximately 30%. This does not even include those who are not getting treated. An estimate of approximately 31.9% of teens are diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. More than 1 in 3 high school students had experienced persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness in 2019, a 40% increase since 2009. In 2019, approximately 1 in 6 youth reported making a suicide plan in the past year, a 4% increase since 2009. Research demonstrates that students who receive social, emotional, mental, and behavioral health support achieve better academically. School climate, classroom behavior, engagement in learning, and student sense of correctness and well-being all improve as well. School plays a big role in the well-being or lack of in youth. So with this, if you see a person really having a hard time or struggling with school, check up on them. You never know how much that can mean to a person. Your words may stick with them forever.
Okay. Sorry, I got excited last time. Thank you to our youth performers today. We really appreciate your willingness to share your experiences with us. Now we're getting ready to hear more from our panelists.
The next few questions will be directed towards all 3 of our panelists. Audience, you're welcome to add your own questions in the chat throughout this discussion, and we will get to them in a few minutes once we start our Q&A. Based on everything we've heard so far today, as well as your own personal experiences, we would like to invite our panelists to begin by talking with us about some helpful or positive ways that they have seen schools support students' mental health. In other words, what are schools currently doing well when it comes to mental health? There's no line or anything, so whoever wants to start can go.
You can always take a few seconds to think about it. Gather your thoughts. Feel free.
Also, I can repeat the question if it's needed.
Yeah, please do that, Adelina.
The first part of the question is, what are some helpful or positive ways that they've seen schools support students' mental health? Or in other words, what are schools currently doing well when it comes to mental health?
I can start. So I have to say that there's a component to schools called the Individualized Education Plan for students, which means, that students that need a little bit of extra help or are having trouble have a series of assessments that determine what they need in school. One of the positive things that I've seen that is actually increasing lately is this idea of really considering the social and emotional components. And that can actually include counseling. So it actually allows for the student to receive these services as part of their IEP, which makes it something that needs to legally happen, and it needs to happen as part of their education plan. So I think that's helpful because it makes the school accountable. It makes them accountable for finding that space and finding those resources for the student. The other thing that I've noticed this year, which is actually why I am now in the position that I am in, is that we are hiring more social workers. Now, needless to say, we have to figure that piece out because you can hire a million social workers, but if the system is not supporting that, then it's not necessarily going to mean much. But I think that's the first step, is this idea of like acknowledging that these are needs that students are facing and, you know, having those resources in school.
Okay. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm like so paranoid about that area. Okay. Thank you, Ellie, for your response. Something that I would say my school is doing good about mental health is FAM. We have this thing called FAM, and it's all days after school. Students have the opportunity to go and meet with their teachers to do homework and go over classwork and go over everything that they need help with, study for a test. And I have noticed that a lot of people's grades are like increasing and people's learning is becoming easier, to say it that way, because like it just allows you to see the support that you have. And all of this FAM idea was created by the student government, which is also really good because it allows the students to have a voice. It allows the students to communicate, to represent all of us, and that's the way that we got FAM. And if it wasn't for the opportunity of giving that was given to the students to speak up and reunite all of our needs, we wouldn't have FAM. And yeah.
Cole, would you like to say anything?
I think I might be stealing the fam idea. That's great. I see at our school one really strong practice. We've moved to what's called competency-based education. And a few schools around Boston are doing this, where you essentially don't have hard deadlines, where if you don't pass this in by Friday, you get marked down a letter grade, a letter grade, a letter grade. Your grades are based on what you can show you can do. And I've seen this for students really take some of that stress off of like, I don't even have to tell my teacher that I have this conflict after school, or I need to take care of this thing. Because sometimes it's not even like a specific thing. I have a shift tonight, or it's hard to describe. And I think removing that barrier of having to defend why you can't get something done on a certain timeline and make it more flexible has removed a lot of stress for me as a teacher, and has really allowed us to free us to focus on learning. You need to be able to write, to argue at this level, at this grade. And that's what we care about. That's what I care about. That's what you should care about. And that's what your grade will reflect, is how well you can do that. And so we now know, truthfully, student and me, where you stand and where you're at. And it's not affected by, you know, your ability to attend class in the middle of a pandemic, your ability to do something on a Friday night when you might have other responsibilities. And so I think it's one structure that's really, really helped.
Okay, if nobody would like to add on to what anybody said, we can move on to the next question. Anybody? No, you guys are good? Okay. If you could imagine teachers and schools doing everything right to support students' mental wellness and healing, what would this look like? Again, if anybody needs me to repeat the question.
And just for the record, I added the question in the chat if that also helps too. But feel free to repeat it, Isaiah, so you could give them some time to think about it, please.
Gotcha. If you could imagine teachers and schools doing everything right to support students' mental wellness and healing, what would this look like to you?
I want to go. Okay. Can you guys hear me right? Yeah. Okay. So I think the first outcome that I will see would be union, because right now you enter a high school and you see a lot of social anxiety. You see a lot of people on their sides in a corner, not speaking to each other, just in their own worlds. And I'm one of them. And it's just due to the fact that we are so overwhelmed by everything and we just don't want to dump that onto other people. So if teachers and the school system will do everything right for students, I feel like there will be a lot of union, not only amongst the students, but also the whole like staff and community of the education system. Also, I would say that if teachers will do everything right, you would see it not only in their grades, because I feel like grades are just a lot, but also in the way people participate. A lot of students are forced to participate in class, even though it makes us uncomfortable. So if students are in a safe space where they know they won't be judged or like ashamed by their answers, which would happen if the school system will be doing everything right, I will feel like students will feel way more comfortable in the whole school environment. Also, I think there will be less trouble because we're so troubled, and the main reason for that is the school system. We spend like 8 hours of our day in school, so it is like our life, and we go to school since like we're 3 to like we're 18 or 19, and then we have to do more school and have our lives figured out. I feel like if there will be more support to that and less stress, there will be a huge difference. But yeah.
I saw the word imagine. So I'm gonna go I'm gonna go on the imagination. I would totally redo how we think about the school day. I think the school day and how it's set up is not helpful for student learning and certainly not helpful for mental health and creating kind of the community that you were talking about, Juliana. If as an adult, if I want to learn like 3 things this summer, there's no way that the way I would learn them is in 1 hour increments back to back each day. No adult learns like this, and nobody chooses to learn like this. And yet it's kind of how we've done the whole school system since the early 20th century. And there haven't been that many changes in it. And so I'm really excited about reimagining schools around student voice and like what student voice being like the biggest part of that. Because if we're going to have truly democratic schools where all members of the community's voices are heard, I think it's really important that student voice leads that. And so we've been doing this at Charlestown High School, where students have been totally reimagining what school could look like. From you take one class at a time. There are schools in the country that try this. You'll take one class for 3 weeks and you focus on that. Or you take your classes for shorter periods in the morning, and in the afternoon, you're doing a self-directed project, or you're in the community where you have a work experience, but allowing youth to really choose what their school looks like in a democratic way is, I think, a super important function. And I really think that structure will certainly help and allow sort of improvement in mental health as well.
I have to agree with everything that was said so far. I think my view would just be teamwork, right? So instead of there being all these different departments, social work being on one side, teachers, right, administration, everyone would just kind of work together, including students, and we would actually have the space to do these things. One of the difficult components of my job right now is that, yes, I am providing these services, but I have to provide them during lunch when students should be socializing with other students, right? I have to provide them during times where students don't necessarily want to be there and where there are other things that they could be doing. So I think giving that space where students can, study if they want to study, do homework if they want to do homework, go see a counselor if that's what they want to do, right? So a little bit more flexibility, focusing on whatever the needs of the students are in that particular school. I think that's really important, and that is something that I would really want to see. I think also incorporating, we all have to learn coping skills, right? So we do a lot of teaching about like, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be angry, it's okay to feel frustrated, but we don't know what to do when we're feeling those ways. So I think schools also need to incorporate these ideas of like, what can you do when you're sad? What's okay to do in school? What's okay to do at home? Like, can we learn some yoga? Can we do some running? Can we learn some art? Can we, have a room where someone can scream if that's what they need to do, right? So just being able to kind of look at school from all different lenses and not just the academic, like rigorous, this is what you need to do. But I also think that that's something that we need to think about from a national level, right? Like we can talk to teachers all we want, but if there's these ideas nationally or statewide, then we won't be able to make as many of the changes as we're hoping for.
I want to add something. So thank you, Ellie, for your response. I also want to point out or emphasize what Ellie said about the way that school is set up, and also Cole brought that up. The routine is very monotonous, and when you're so stuck in a routine, you get more overwhelmed. In my school, each class is 80 minutes. That's more than an hour that I'm sitting there listening to the same person talking about the same thing. And that overwhelms me. And that overwhelms the students. And we've all like complained about that. And it's just unheard. So I do think that the way the school schedule is set up is very, very exhaustive. Also, the lunch is like 30 minutes. So you're telling me that I'm sitting down learning for 80 minutes and then I just get a 30-minute lunch. So we need to change that.
Would anybody like to add anything else? No? Okay, we're moving on to the next question. What do you think prevents teachers in schools from learning this vision, and what needs to change?
I will start with that one because it's one I've been thinking about for the whole year. I think funding, right? We need the money to be able to do a lot of these things. We need people to understand that this is important. Everyone needs to know that this is important, and they need to be able to put their money into it, because a lot of these things go through budget. And if we don't have the budget for it, then we don't have the resources and we don't have the systems. This year, I think schools needed to really focus on social emotional components. And even though academics are very important, there needed to be more of a balance, right? So I don't necessarily think that this was the year for us to have a rigorous academic learning schedule for students. I think we needed to get back to being in a space with other people, right? Most of you or all of you at some point were learning from a computer, from a screen. I know my son, for example, his first freshman year was on screen. He just learned how to interact in high school on 10th grade. That is not the way that anyone else has done this. And so just allowing for that space for people to just be human, for people to get back to basics, to learn the way that they're feeling, to figure things out, to understand what it's like to sit in a classroom again. I think those are things that are preventing us from being able to move forward right now. And when it comes to mental health, there still is that huge stigma around what that means, right? So what does it mean to go to the counselor's office? What do they do? What does it mean about you? What does it say? And I think we need to, as a community, just to continue to have these discussions so that there isn't so much stigma around it. So that it is okay to just check in with someone because you just need to vent for 5 minutes. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, right? Or that you need to go on medication or that you need to be hospitalized. Like all these things that people associate with mental health. So I think that's what we need to do. We need to go right back to basics, and everyone needs to be on the same page about this being important.
Um, Also, I totally agree with what Ellie said. And I also want to add that teachers and like school staff, like they're all affected by the pandemic. I have a very deep connection with a staff member from my school. Her name is Ms. Martinez. I love her. And we constantly talk about the way that the pandemic also affected them. The stigma is a big thing. There is so much stigma about around the whole mental health, and it is constantly like taught that one, boys are supposed to like be so strong, and that when boys go to seek for mental health is bad, or that makes them weak, and we need to change that. It is also taught that adults are supposed to be like this role model of strength, and I think that just labels adults and like doesn't allow adults to feel. And it's just around all this idea of being human. Like we're all human and we all went through the whole process of the pandemic and we're still trying to adjust to it. Like if we don't have the right resources, we're never gonna progress because we all need to be seen and to be heard. We all need it.
Jelena, I'm so glad you brought up the idea of adults, because I think in a school environment, like how everyone is doing in the community is so important, and you feel all of that. And I think it's important to, as a teacher, obviously maintain professional boundaries, but be clear about like some of the strategies that you use. Back to Ellie, what you were saying about like this idea that there are strategies out there and things that we can do. I would say one of the biggest barriers I notice at my school, I have 30 kids in every one of my classes. It's hard to get to everybody. And my school certainly recognizes mental health as a important thing, but really all we have is sort of like, sure, you can take a break right now. But there's like not that second step like you were talking about, Ellie, where it's like you actually need things to provide students with. You know, you're going to get broken up with as a teenager. You're going to experience things that are negative, and to have tools and people you can talk to and adults who are like good themselves, like you said, Julian, and then can provide you some tools and some ideas and can talk that through. I think that's so important. One of our administrators at our school is doing some research on how to be teach teachers how to do some counseling and like how that is in their role. And I think the evolving role of every adult in a school building needing those skills, I think, is super important. And there's a lot we can learn from youth on that too.
Okay. Would anybody like to add on to what anybody said? That's good. That's good. Me too. How would we balance students' mental health and their productivity? I have to repeat it again. How do we balance students' mental health and their productivity?
I can go first.
Oh yeah, go. No. I was just gonna say I added the question to the chat as I've been doing, but Cole, take it away.
I think about this a lot because I think as a caring adult, like if you remember back to, your childhood or previous experiences, you think of times where somebody pushed you or said no or set a firm boundary where that was helpful. Where it was like, no, I think you should try out for this thing. So I think of that appropriate time to push as the answer to this question, because I think it's a really important role for adults, that it's not okay to just say that like, we're in a pandemic, we're in a mental health crisis, like everything's okay. Like, let's just give you space, because that's not appropriate or helpful to the point that you were making, Ellie, of like really giving you real skills. And so I think it takes like a lot of good relationship with a student and building that relationship so that you know when to provide that push and when to stay back. But always with this like goal in mind that it's always about like what's best for that young person in that moment. And so sometimes we do need a push, and it is okay to be like, you got broken up with, and let's figure out some strategies. But that happens too, and like it's not all going to be positive things. And I think that's super important as that role, that we're not just, you know, giving up on our responsibility to provide those pushes sometimes.
I can go next. So I spent a lot of time in Head Start schools, pre-K students, right? So the really little ones, 3, 4 years old. And when we think about their social emotional learning, we think about like giving them language and giving them ideas that they can do. And 3, 4 years old, we're talking basics, right? Like, oh, you're crying. Does that mean you're sad, right? Or like, oh, you might look mad. Oh, it's possible to feel sad and mad, right? But those things don't stop when you're 5 years old. Somehow we stop teaching those things in school, and we stop just considering that they're there. So I think schools need to provide the space, the classroom space, the discussions, the abilities to say, for a student to say, I'm really mad right now, and for that to be okay, right? For a student to be able to express those things and it not be seen as a negative, to be able to ask for some space and know where to go and know what to do with those feelings and those emotions. And I think we need to continue teaching those even in college. We all grow, we all develop different ways. The way that you dealt with your sadness when you were 3 and 4 is not the way that you deal with it when you're 15. And we have to understand that all of those things are okay. The only thing that we need to work on is like, how do we express those things, right? So there are ways to express your anger that are going to get you in trouble. And then there are ways to express your anger that are seen as more positive. And we just have to create the ability to be able to do that in school.
I totally agree with what Ellie and Cole just said. I do believe that all of those things should be taught in like every grade, because like why stop doing that? Like we're all in constant evolution and we all change so much, and the way that I deal with things now are definitely not the way that I dealt with them like a couple of years ago. Like I said, back to the stigma issue, there is a lot of stigma around the way that we express ourselves due to the fact that not all of us are exposed to healthy boundaries. Not all of us are exposed to healthy ways of expressing our emotions. So when a person only knows a certain way of expressing themselves, and that way is seen as negative, but it is not addressed, like the teacher or whoever that person is expressing to says, okay, you express yourself in this way that was negative due to this and this and that, and this is the way that you could do it better. If that doesn't happen, that person is gonna keep doing it, or that person is gonna just bottle up their emotions because they are being seen as a burden. They are being seen as something negative, as a problem, because it was said, okay, what you did was negative, but how could I make it better? So I think that we really have to talk about language and boundaries and healthy ways of expressing ourselves and healthy way of setting up boundaries and just healthy habits in total.
Would anybody like, or is Cole, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just so glad this is being recorded, because that was brilliant. Like that idea, I feel like you just named something that I've been thinking about and couldn't put into words. I thought that was so brilliant how you put it. And it, you know, as a teacher, it's not okay to just think like, oh, I know they've got something going on at home, and like I'm just gonna kind of not like engage, or I'm going to give that's not appropriate. That's about you. That's like a selfish, that's not what's best for that other person. And the way you put that was so brilliant of like, you need to talk about that. You need to let somebody know, like, listen, I know you're feeling this way, but like when you yell at me like this, like that's not great. And so we should talk about that. And that's like a real honest relationship. That was so brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories and feelings about this important topic. Now we'd like to invite our audience into the conversation. If you have a question for any of our panelists, please put them in the chat now. Also, let us know who you'd like to answer your question. Now we're going to hand it back to Pedro, who will be facilitating our Q&A portion of the panel.
Wow, I'm blown away. Actually, this is amazing. I'm still processing half of like the thoughts. I was writing ideas down and comments and people. This was amazing. So first of all, thank you for the amazing panelists, to the performers and the speakers. Everybody's done a great job this conversation. And again, like we said in the beginning, this is just a conversation starter. This doesn't start or end with this panel. We're hoping this panel to be the first little snowball towards the avalanche of change that we want to bring to the city. So again, thank you for all the idea sharing and stuff. So now feel free, I want to just open the chat to the community. If you have any questions, comments, it could be to all three of them. It could be to someone specific. It could just be general to anybody that wants to answer. Feel free to drop it in the chat, please. And we'll start off with one question that we have from Rafael, who dropped in the chat. The question is, how can programs like ours also be supportive? So this is for anybody that feels inclined to answer. And for the panelists, you don't have to answer every question, but if you do feel inclined, I recommend you to take up space. Again, how can programs like ours, or just youth programs, youth development programs in Boston, how can we be supportive in this initiative with student life and mental health management?
I was just answering the question in the chat, but what I was gonna say is that, speaking from experience, and like, look what's happening right now. This program is literally allowing students to raise their voices and speak up about all of this and address such an important topic that is mostly not addressed. This is what helps us, and this is how programs like EVA allow students and allow the whole system to change. I am allowed to work on my academics in this program, and that makes a huge difference, so that I don't have to go home and be more overwhelmed about doing chores or about cleaning the whole house or about doing my academics. Programs like EVA are truly amazing because not only do they help us on all of that, but also it builds strength in group work. We are constantly working in groups, and that allows the union to be seen, that allows the habits to be created, the boundaries to be made, which is amazing.
Thank you very much for that. And if anybody else feels inclined to also answer that question, I'll give you a second to jump in, or I could move on to the next one. And again, Jolene, great answer. Cool. Jump right in the room. We'll go to the next question. The next question I got here: if there was one message you like to share with teachers, what would it be? And that was given to us by Sandra on staff. If there was one message you like to share with teachers, what would it be? And that's for anybody that feels inclined to share.
I have to say, now that I am seeing firsthand what it is like to be in a school, in a classroom full of students, I have to say it's hard work. It is not easy. I am very good at doing one-on-one and doing group work. I would not be good at having 25 students who all need my attention at once. So I have to commend teachers for doing that. It is really hard work, especially right now where everyone has specific needs and we're all having a hard time. So I would say to teachers, to just make sure that they're also taking care of their own mental health, that they are finding the space to take care of themselves, so that when they do get to class, they have, you know, that much more time and energy to deal with whatever comes to the day, because it is a lot. There's a lot going on right now.
Thank you very much for that, Ellie. I appreciate that answer. Does anybody else on the panel feel inclined to answer that?
So I have this math teacher, and she is like very busy constantly. A lot of work is thrown to her due to the fact that she's like very, very professional, and like everybody loves her. And what I do constantly is that I remind her of how capable she is, and I remind her of how proud I am. And I've seen that that's something that truly helps her, because it's not something that you hear a lot, especially if you're an adult. So yeah, just giving that little reminder of how capable someone is and how proud you are of them can make a huge difference.
Okay, Jolie Nail with the very mature answer. Let's get it. I appreciate that. No, that's all. I'm telling you, as an adult that works with youth, I appreciate you doing that to the adults around you, and I'm sure they appreciate it as well. Cool. We got 2 questions from the youth. I definitely want to give space for the youth to answer the questions for the panelists. So the first one's from Adelina, who is one of our hosts. Adelina asks, do teachers have a big say in the decisions the city makes in our schools? Do teachers have a big say in the decisions the city makes in our schools? Dum, dum, dum.
I can start off. I think one of the answers that's maybe the off the cuff answer that you might hear a lot of people say is no, right? That a lot of these decisions are made by structural powers that are beyond teachers, but I also don't accept that answer. And I think that's really important too, that it's, you know, Alice Walker has that great quote about like, you know, the only way you can really give up your power, I'm gonna butcher it, but you give up your power by thinking you don't have any. And that's a huge problem. So I think teachers need to take like responsibility and step forward. We are in our contract negotiations with the city, we're demanding a lot of the things that we have talked about tonight, of not just a social worker in every school, but like lower class sizes and actually some of these changes we can make so we have more than one social worker, so people can actually get seen in a timely manner. And so we are using our collective power with youth and families, and I think all those people coming together, we can't forget that we have power, and that's really, really important.
Thank you very much for that, Coleman. I really do appreciate that perspective from a teacher. Cool. Oh, now this works. So thank you for that, Cole. Thank you for your perspective as a teacher. I appreciate that. We're gonna jump over now to Brandon, who's one of the youth in the room. He's waving. They're watching us from the youth program. So with that, what do you think makes a student eligible for a counselor? So I don't know if Ellie wants to answer that or Cole, but I guess the question is, what makes a student eligible to receive resources in school or to be able to see a counselor?
So I think that depends on exactly why the student feels like they need a counselor. If it's something that's dealing with school, that is affecting school, then I would say first step is just letting an adult in the school know that you are seeking that support, that you would really like that support. Right now, schools should all have a social worker or a school counselor. So just kind of taking that step of saying to someone that you trust, hey, I could use the extra support. And then if for whatever reason the school doesn't have the capacity to do that, then you can always go to your doctor. You can go to the youth program that you're a part of, or you can go to someone else in the community and just really ask them to connect you with someone For many students, the doctor is the first step because they can make referrals to wherever it is that you need. If it's something around school, I would say go to school. If it's something that's affecting you outside of school and you feel like you would really like that space outside of school to discuss those things, then you can go to your doctor, or you could just ask an adult to help you find a referral.
Thank you very much for that, Ali. And Brandon, I hope that answers your question. And I'll take a quick second just to say, if you need help, please ask for it. I know there's a lot of stigma to that, as has been mentioned in this call. Find someone you trust and please ask for help. So just want to take a quick second just to lift that up in the air, to Ellie's point, whether it's someone in school, someone at home, or someone in the community. If you need help of any sort, please, I encourage you to ask for help. Find someone you trust, speak up, and ask for help. With that, we'll go to the next question provided by.
Pedro, can I ask something really quick?
Yeah, please, for sure. Take up.
I just want to point out that, and I think Jolene brought it up earlier, finding a counselor is something that you can't just find someone and you have to stick with that person forever. Finding a counselor or a therapist is someone that you really have to connect with, and it's someone that you almost have to like interview and see if this would be a good fit. So I know sometimes students don't have that option because there's only one person in the school. So you could really ask to be connected to somewhere else. And if it really doesn't feel like this is a person that you're comfortable with, I would strongly suggest that you go and seek someone else. You know, for a lot of us, it matters whether that person speaks the same language that you do, if they come from the same background that you do, if they understand, right? If they grew up in the city, if they grew up, whatever it is that you feel like you need, you have to go and seek that. Having a counselor is not like a one size fits all. So if you're not comfortable with that person, please go and see if you can find someone else that's a better fit for you.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a real great point, Ellie, right? Like therapists are not one size fit all for everybody. They definitely, you have to build some kind of relationship there. So great point, Ellie. I appreciate you taking up space for that. The next question is from Paul, who's also one of the youth in the room who's watching us from the youth program. And Paul's question is, to anybody who feels inclined to answer, do you think schools do enough to support mental health? Do you think schools do enough to support mental health? And I know that's a loaded one. We could answer that one however you feel inclined, but do we think schools do enough to support mental health? I see a few nods.
I would say no. And I'd also ask a question about why schools are one of the only parts of our society that we've asked to handle mental health for youth. I think that's a really important question too, because I don't think it's possible to, I think it's a great place to start. And we certainly could do more, but I think we need to think about it, as Ellie, you were saying earlier, more broadly, across every place too.
Yeah, great point, Cole, man. Unless somebody else wants to add, but great point, Cole. Definitely school is one place that the kids are at, but society as a whole definitely has to embrace the topic. And to Ellie's point earlier, government on a national and also local level has to step in as well. But unless, does anybody else on the panel have anything to add to that in terms of do schools do enough? I know we all agree with a no. Just want to make sure I don't take up anybody's space.
I think we have taken the steps necessary, some of the first steps. I have to say something that I'm really struggling right now being in a school is that I don't have the time that students need. As I said earlier, I'm often seeing students during lunch, which is supposed to be about 20-25 minutes. By the time that the student gets to me, it's, I want to say, a 15-minute conversation, and it's not appropriate to talk about certain things in 15 minutes and then say, you know, all right, wrap it up. Like now you have to go to math class, right? So I think we have a long way to go. I don't necessarily know how we would do that, but I do think that we need to provide the space for students to just be able to talk.
Thank you very much for that, Ellie. I appreciate your bringing your experience. Cool. We'll go to the next question. the next question was provided by a member from the chat, a community member. What are some specific steps teachers can take to restructure the existing power dynamics between them and the powers that be? So I'll ask it again to give you guys some time to think and process it. What are some specific steps teachers can take to restructure the existing power dynamics between them and the powers that be? Oh, they're bringing the heat today.
Organize and join organizations and be in community. I would love to take this moment to brag about our students at Charlestown. So if you know anything about the history of Charlestown, Charlestown High School is like central to the history of busing in Boston and school segregation and desegregation in Boston. And Charlestown has gentrified a ton. And our school is 95% students of color in a neighborhood that is mostly white. And there was a proposal back in the fall to take over our school, actually, from the community around it. And teachers, youth got together and organized around this issue. We wrote in the Boston Globe, we wrote all over, like we really organized and said, no, this isn't going to happen. There are things we want to change about our school, but there's no way that we are going to get pushed out of here. And I think that that was totally youth led. And so being like organizing is definitely something that teachers and other folks, that family students need to continue doing to get at those power structures, and it works.
Organization, man, organizing, community organizing, right? It's always been the secret to a lot of changes, but it's always the hard part to do. So but to your point, definitely I just want to second that. I'm big on community organizing and getting together in unity around these issues. So again, Cole, thank you for your answer. Cool, meet in the room. We got one last question on the list, at least for now. What can adults who work with youth do to help destigmatize mental health? What can adults who work with youth do to help destigmatize mental health?
Yeah, I saw you, Ali. So I feel like inclusion is the key. Am I speaking too loud? Okay. I feel like inclusion is the key since I grew up, like when I first got here, I was not in an environment with a lot of diversity. So I feel like inclusion and like feeling accepted is one of like the needs that every youth and every person needs to be fulfilled. Um, Being in this program and like being surrounded by people of color and people that have similar backgrounds as me and people that have gone through the same experiences as me has really helped me feel accepted and feel like it's not only me out there who is dealing with this type of issues. So yeah, just inclusion.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that, Jolene. I really appreciate that. I would love to, with my own experience, to add that honestly, communication. I think just talking about the stigma around things we don't talk about. Stigma only lies where we don't speak. So I think one of the biggest things that adults could start doing is really talking about it, making it a normal subject to talk about. I think that's what really brings a lot of the stigmatization that that there's no conversations happening, and when conversations do happen, there's this awkward atmosphere that kind of comes with it. So I think as adults, we have to create a safe space for you to be able to say, I'm not okay, or I need help, and make it in a way that it's conversational, that it's not judgmental, that it doesn't come with any repercussions. So I just wanted to add that I think is very important. And I say that also too for the parents, you know, for your kids at home, definitely just make it a conversation. I think, again, there's only stigma around conversations we don't have, right? That's why there's stigma, because people are not talking through things or through topics. So just wanted to lift that up too. I always welcome these conversations, hence why we're having this community conversation, because we want to start the conversation, because that's how it starts. It starts with a talk, and then we come up with ideas, and then we start talking about action and unionizing, like Cole said. So again, we hope that this conversation is it's a small start of something much larger that could wrap itself around the city and open the doors for resources, help, and again, just a safe space for people. So just wanted to add that 1 second. Does anybody else have anything to add? I would also encourage, I have one. Oh, I got another question that came up. So yeah, does anybody want to add to that before I go to the next one? Cool, reading the room. We'll go to what we have now as so far the last questions. I would encourage the community members, if you do have anything that will not let you sleep at night if you don't ask, to add it now. Or we'll just start wrapping up with the questions we do have. And then I encourage everybody to stick on for the last part. We're going to share the community resource kit that we shared. We want to make sure we give you the resource that we put together. But the question we have now is, how do you bring up the topic of mental health issues in your classrooms, or in classrooms in general? How do you, or how could you bring the topic of mental health issues in your class? Oh, and that's specifically for Cole. I just saw that's directed to you, Cole.
Thanks, Isaiah, for that question. It's something that you have to learn in your practice. One, I think it's incredibly important to bring it up and to make space for it. And I think it's important to make space for it in different ways. So one thing that I know from listening to students is that if you're in BPS, sometimes this thing happens where you get unit after unit after unit of study in history and English class that's a lot about oppression too. And so students will come in being like, we've talked about like only like racism, oppression, and like all these things that it doesn't allow for other parts of that conversation to happen. And I think that's really important. So we start out the year doing this, like imagining what a better future can look like. And I think that can allow people to take that in different ways. And so I have this student who wrote this absolutely brilliant poem where she wrote about her experience coming out to her mom, and it didn't go well, but she rewrote it in a way that like, in this ideal way where it went super well. And it was this beautiful moment where like other youth in the class, you know, kind of came together around her, and it was so powerful to see that. And I don't think that could have happened if I said, okay, everybody has to write a poem exactly like this. And so I think creating space for people to enter that conversation when they want to on their own terms is important too. And then also pushing it sometimes, and making youth aware that like talking about depression, talking about suicide doesn't increase, but actually decreases the risk of a lot of these things. And like making that known is super important. So I just shared with my students, and I think everybody should go watch this. There's a New York Times series that they just did about this kind of like, you know, crisis of teenage mental health, to watch this video in class. I always give students the opportunity, if like, you don't feel like it today, step out, totally okay. And like, you know, or like, throw in headphones if it feels too awkward to step out. And so I think allowing people to step in when they want and making that a rule is like really important. And then continuing to give folks opportunities.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that answer, Cole. I really do agree with you in terms of it's at their time, right? Working with youth, you always have to be able to let them step in, or whenever they feel comfortable, as well as step out of the conversation whenever they feel comfortable, and also take up as much space or give as much space as they feel comfortable. So I really do appreciate that perspective. The question we have now, and I'm going to direct this towards Ellie due to a private message that I got. They're curious in terms of your opinion. In your opinion, Ellie, what are some signs that a student might be struggling with their mental health? Or what are signs that adults, family members, parents, or anybody, friends, can look for to know that a student, a young person might be struggling with mental health?
This question is easy to answer and hard at the same time because everyone is different. So the way that I might show when something's going on with me might not be the way that someone else shows it, right? So I think the key component to this is just building relationships. I think especially adults really should try and build relationships with their students, with their youth, so that they notice when there's a shift. So for example, a student that was always raising their hand is for some reason not raising their hand anymore, right? A student that was always open to answering questions is now falling asleep in class. Or, someone that was always coming in and they were always wearing their fresh new sneakers and brand new clothes, and all of a sudden they're coming in pajamas, right? So just kind of like noticing those subtle changes that if you know someone, you know that something shifted, something where they might not want to talk, they no longer answer your phone calls or text messages, or they seem kind of like they might always be sad or mad, or they seem happy, but it doesn't feel genuine, things like that. It's really hard to say if someone comes in and they look sad, then that means that they need extra support, because we're all human and we're all going to have sad days or mad days, right? But just kind of like noticing and being able to build those relationships where you could say, hey, if something's up, just let me know, like whatever it is, we don't have to talk about it. We don't have to do anything. Just let me know if you need me. And I would say that's the first step.
No, that's a great answer. And from my years of working with youth, I agree with you, Ellie. A lot of the times that I realize something's happening, it's not because the youth speaks up, it's because there's a change in the pattern, there's a change in the routine. And like I said earlier, I encourage people to ask for help, but also encourage those around you to ask if people are okay. Sometimes people won't speak up. I also encourage you to ask, are you okay? Do you need anything? Is everything fine? Or however you want to approach the person. So it goes both ways. Don't always wait for them. You can always initiate a conversation or just do a wellness check, right? To Ellie's point, if you do notice there's a change in some kind of behavior or pattern, and relationship building is a key tool to that. So again, great point, Ellie. And for everybody else, not only ask for help, but ask if they're okay too, for those that are around you, if you see a change in behavior. So due to time, I'm going to take one last question, and then we'll get into the resource kit so we can review it and share it. The last question is from Sandra, a staff member. Are there any specific resources that you recommend for students or families? Some that are available at your school or broader community? So again, and I'm guessing I'll direct this towards Ellie and Cole, whoever feel, or both of you. I'll ask you one more time. Are there any specific resources that you recommend for students or families? Some that are available at your school or broader community?
I would say youth programs are always very helpful. I'm sure if any of you go to Pedro, he will direct you, and if he doesn't know the answer, he will find it. If you're in school, you might not like any of the teachers that you have this year, but there might be one teacher that just kind of gave you a good vibe last year, right? So I would say go to that person, and that person will try and find the answers for you. I think the first step is always asking for help, and then trying to find the resources from there. Doctors' offices are always a good place to start. They're pretty good about kind of knowing, where to direct you. They usually have a behavioral support staff within their clinic. A lot of this stuff has to do with health insurance, unfortunately. So sometimes going through your doctor is the easiest way because they know what insurance you have and they can direct you to the right place. I believe Pedro is going to give you a little bit more information on resources, and there's always the suicide hotline, which I can put in the chat, which is just a hotline if you are feeling like you are at the end and you don't know what else to do and you're really considering something like hurting yourself. You can call them. They're not going to try and find you. They're not going to ask questions. They're just going to let you talk and vent and figure things out.
Yeah, thank you for that answer, Ellie. And if you could add that number in the chat, it'll be helpful too, whether it's in the kit or not. It'll just be helpful to add it in the chat. So appreciate that, actually. And I appreciate that answer.
would just add to that too, that for youth, it's important to remember that it's never a bad thing to get an adult involved, or like get somebody that you can go to just to get a second opinion. Even if you're like, my friend made this joke, but like, they're not really, just get someone involved, ask, it's always helpful to get outside of just your own head about it. And it might feel a little bit awkward, like, oh, they told me this in private, they need, I don't want to violate their trust. It's super important, to let somebody else know what's going on, that somebody that you trust at school, an adult, to bring them in and they can point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Cole. I appreciate that. Before I close off with the resource kit and sharing of resources, I just want to open space up one last time for the panel. If there's any last questions, comments, concerns, ideas, statements, anything you want to close out with, this would be the time for that. So this is for the panel, for either Cole, Ellie, or Jolene. Do not feel pressured. It's only just giving you space in case there's something that wasn't asked or something you really want to say that didn't fit into any of the questions. Feel free to share that now. Cool. I always like to give people 20 seconds of awkward silence to let them think. Cool. So I appreciate you guys again. Before I share the resource kit, on behalf of my staff and everybody present and the youth, I want to thank all three of you for being part of the panel, for sharing your experiences, for bringing your expertise, all of your knowledge, and just being open and vulnerable. Honestly, I really do appreciate it. So I want to thank you again on behalf of my staff, the community, and everybody that this is going to impact, because it's not going to sit here and it's not going to stop here. This is, again, just this is the first convo of many to come throughout the city. Yeah, so with that, there are also free clinic. Also, Ellie shared the National Suicide Hotline. It's in the chat. Please look at it. If you need it, save it, screenshot it. I recommend for you to do that. Also, if for whatever reason you lose it, reach out to anybody that knows somebody. If you're here on this panel, you must know someone. So reach out to whoever you know if you want more resources, or if you need help, or to sit down with someone, we're here to help as well. And she also, Ellie also added that there are also free clinics that you can Google if you don't want it associated with your doctor or parents. So that's a great point. Sometimes we want privacy. To Joline's point, that's one of the things she didn't like, that they didn't honor her privacy. So if you don't want it associated with your doctor or parents, you can Google free clinics and go that route. But again, if you need help, feel free to reach out to someone and we'll make sure to connect you as best as we can. So with that being said, I'm going to share our resource kit now, which I'm super proud of. We'll get to it now. Can everybody see my screen? So while I'm sharing this, I'm going to have Sandra please share the link in the chat for everybody to get access to it. If you lose it, we're going to send it through an email blast to everybody, and we're going to try to spread it. But just to give you guys an example of what's there, I'll start off with this right here. So before I go off, I'll share a little bit and I'll go as I talk. So it's a few resources. So one, we have community places in the community that are offering mental health resources. We just put some together. This is not all. I want to say that out there out loud. This is not all. We just put a few together in terms of South End, Lower Roxbury, some Dorchester parts and around Boston. But again, this is not all. This is not everything out there. We just try to put some together for you. So we do have community resources that you can plug into. We also have everything comes in English and Spanish. So you'll see double of everything. There's going to be one English version and one Spanish version. We want to make sure it reaches everybody. We have everything from conversation starters, which is what you're looking at now, to help you start conversations. Teachers and staff, we encourage you to print these out, put them in your space, share them with students or families, however you see fit. But again, these are tips on getting conversations started in terms of approaches, how to approach it delicately, so on and so forth. We also have grounding techniques that students can use whenever they're feeling high on anxiety, emotions, or depression. These are just basic grounding using the 5 senses. Ooh, we got someone joining the conversation late. So we also have grounding techniques too. We included the video from Michelle Wu. We have the writing pieces. We only had 2 students share the writing piece. Well, 4 students share the writing pieces today, but this is a PDF for all 20 of our students writing. So feel free to look through that as well and enjoy that writing, which all has to do with the mental health initiative as well. There's a small breakdown there so you can understand where their writings came from and what inspired their writings. We also have an introduction to the resource kit. Take a second to look at it. It explains what's in the resource kit, what inspired the resource kit, and our mission for the resource kit. So again, take a second to look at that. It's a lot of materials. And we also have 2 subfolders that include youth videos, where all of our youth are sharing their pieces, visual pieces, and as well as writing pieces. And then we also have the youth visual art. So these are comic strips that youth did regarding mental health and how they see it and their own experiences with mental health. So again, we're going to share this through emails, but it should be in the chat right now. I can't see because I'm sharing space, but I see some nods, so I'm guessing it's there. But yeah, so again, these are resources, not just for, I'll stop sharing for a second. These are resources not just for the students, but we wanted to make resources for families, for the students, and for staff and everybody else. We want this resource kit to impact everybody. Again, this isn't a resource kit that's going to solve everything. It's kind of just to get the work started, at least on our end. We wanted to put some basic stuff together, connect you with some service providers, give you some conversation starters, coping mechanisms, and so on and so forth, and as well as youth art to raise awareness. So I encourage you to not only get access to the resource kit for yourself, but share the resource kit with friends, families, and students alike. Again, this was all youth led. It was created by youth, for families, for friends, for teachers, for staff, for adults, everybody in between. So yeah, if you have any questions now specifically towards the resource kit, we still have a few minutes. I'll open up just for 1 minute or 2 if you have any questions regarding the resource kit specifically. If not, we're good. But if you do have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat now, and me and my staff will we'll be more than happy to answer any questions, to explain anything with the resource kit. But again, I encourage you to download it, take it with you, share it with people. We, on behalf of my staff and all the youth, we thank you for participating today. We thank you for bringing your stories, your expertise. In terms of the community, we want to thank you for being present today. We'll take a second just to leave this on the screen. If you guys want to just take a screenshot, we'll also share it. There's also a contact in the resource kit, but if you want to take a screenshot now, this is for me and my staff and I. Feel free to share with us. It doesn't even have to be around mental health. It could just be around helping a youth, helping a family, or you just want to refer somebody to the program, feel free to reach out, or you just want to speak to us and collab or learn more about the program, feel free to do that. Awesome. So thank you, everybody. This is it, man. This finalizes the panel. I just want to take a quick second if we could unmute ourselves. I'm a big fan of this, and just kind of give some poetry slap to the youth and make some noise. Kiddos, y'all can scream, do whatever y'all want to do. But I really do. No, thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Cole. Thank you, Jolynette. Thank you to the youth in the room. I see y'all. Shout out to y'all.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy your night. Enjoy your night. Appreciate it, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. We can stop sharing now. I mean, recording. Great job, everybody.